Throughout history, certain names have echoed with the weight of power, greatness, and influence. Among them, one stands out: Magnus, a name carried by emperors, kings, and conquerors, stretching from the grandeur of the Roman Empire to the Viking Age of Scandinavia. But where did this name originate, and why has it been borne by some of history's most legendary figures? Today, we delve into the captivating story of Magnus, a name that means great, and explore how it has left an enduring mark across time, from Roman generals to Scandinavian kings. From Pompey the Great to Charlemagne, and from Alexander the Great to Magnus the Good, the King of Norway and Denmark, this name has been synonymous with greatness and power. This is the tale of Magnus, the origins and history of one of the most commanding names ever, and the name of legends. And the fact that I'm making this video has nothing to do with my name being Magnus. That's a pure coincidence. The name Magnus derives from Latin, meaning great, and in ancient Rome, it was used not as a common personal name, but as an honorific title reserved for those who achieved remarkable feats, particularly military leaders and emperors. The name embodied power, authority, and greatness, qualities that Roman society prized above all. The first Roman to bear the title was Gnaeus Pompeius, famously known as Pompey the Great. In 81 BC, he was awarded the title by Lucius Cornelius Sulla, the Roman general and dictator, in recognition of Pompey's early victories during Sulla's civil war. Thus, the name Magnus became a symbol of exceptional achievements, a title given only to those who reshaped the course of history. This was such a great title that very few people were given it, and the next one to be honored with the title was none other than Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great was given the title posthumous honorific by the Romans. Although not Roman, Alexander the Great was a major figure in Roman admiration. His legacy loomed large over Roman culture and history, so no wonder the Romans gave him this posthumously. Magnus Olavsson, the first of Norway, was one of the earliest and most prominent bearers of the name in the Norse world. He was the son of Olaf II, better known as Saint Olaf, and became King of Norway in 1035 and King of Denmark in 1042. As a young king under guardianship, Magnus initially held little true power and was far from the commanding, absolute ruler he would later become. After being warned of a peasant rebellion that was brewing, he reversed his father's policies, and the exile of farmers and the confiscation of estates were halted. This shift in policy was politely credited to the king himself. To the crowd's somewhat ironic cheer, he was celebrated as Magnus the Good, not because he was particularly kind, but simply because he was no longer cruel. Constantine the Great, known to history as Magnus, the Roman Emperor Constantine, was a transformative figure whose legacy reshaped both the Roman Empire and Christianity. As the first Roman emperor to convert to Christianity, he set the stage for its spread across Europe and beyond. His founding of Constantinople and decisive victories in civil wars solidified his standing, earning him the enduring title of the Great. Heraclius the Great, another towering leader to receive the honorific Magnus, Heraclius ruled the Byzantine Empire from 610 to 641 CE. His strategic leadership during intense conflicts with the Sassanid Empire and his defense against early Islamic incursions reinforced his status as a formidable and wise ruler. As a name, Magnus grew widely popular in Christian Europe, valued for its meaning the great and for its association with revered leaders. Among the Vikings, the name found a unique appeal, and it became a popular name among the Vikings who traveled to Europe on, let's call it vacation. It's thought that the name may have reached Scandinavia through Charlemagne or Carolus Magnus, better known as Charles the Great, the celebrated Frankish king and emperor who unified much of Western Europe during the early Middle Ages. His influence lingered long after his reign, and in the Norse world, at least 7 Norwegian kings eventually bore the name Magnus, continuing his legacy of greatness. Magnus the Good Haraldsson reigned as King of Norway from 1066 to 1069, though much of his rule was marked by an uneasy power-sharing arrangement with his younger brother Olav Kyrre. Despite being the elder son of the legendary Harald Hardrade, Magnus faced constant challenges to his authority, as many of the powerful nobles in Norway lent their support to Olav. Following their father's dramatic death at the Battle of Stamford Bridge in 1066, Magnus and Olav jointly inherited the throne, creating a tense balance of power. Though Magnus was officially the senior king, his authority was often overshadowed by his brother's popularity and his alliances within the Norwegian nobility. Magnus II's legacy was short-lived, ending abruptly with his death in 1069. However, his line continued through his son, Håkon Torsfostre, who would later rule Norway as co-king alongside his cousin, Magnus Barefoot. His nickname, Barefoot, stemmed from his fondness for traditional Gaelic attire, particularly the short kilts he adopted during his campaigns in Ireland and Scotland, a bold and unconventional choice for a Norse king. During his reign, Magnus pursued an ambitious and aggressive foreign policy, seeking to expand Norway's influence and reclaim territories with Norse heritage. Magnus ensured that several Scottish islands with Norwegian settlements, the Orkney Islands, the Hebrides, and the Isle of Man, were brought under Norwegian rule or tied more closely to Norway's kingdom. Magnus Lagabøte, or Lawmender, is remembered as one of Norway's most reform-minded and influential kings, celebrated for his groundbreaking legal reforms. His legal code, known as the Landslov, meaning the law of the land, had an enduring impact, shaping Norwegian law for centuries and influencing legal frameworks also beyond Norway's borders. Magnus was originally designated by his father to rule Norway as the sole king. However, due to political complexities, he was compelled to share power with Harald Gill, a rival claimant. This power struggle ignited the Norwegian civil wars, a prolonged period of unrest that involved shifting alliances and foreign intervention. Seeking support, Magnus turned to Denmark for aid in his conflict with Harald. Unfortunately, the tides of war turned against him, and he was captured by Harald's forces. In a brutal display of dominance, Harald had Magnus castrated, blinded, and severely maimed, actions that earned Magnus the epithet the Blind. After this, Magnus was sent to live in monastic seclusion at Nidarholm Abbey on the island of Munkholmen. Magnus Eriksson became King of Sweden in 1319 as a young child and concurrently ruled Norway as Magnus VII, uniting both crowns and aiming to bring stability to Scandinavia. By 1332, he expanded his influence to Scania, commanding nearly all of the Nordic territories. Relations were quiet between Sweden and Novgorod until 1348, when Magnus led a crusade against Novgorod, marching up the Neva, forcibly converting the tribes along that river, and briefly capturing the fortress of Orikov for a second time. His ambitious rule eventually led to his deposition from the Swedish throne in 1364. Magnus Erlingsson reigned as King of Norway from 1161 to 1184, becoming the first Norwegian king crowned in a formal church ceremony. Backed by his powerful father, Erling Skake, Magnus claimed the throne as a young child, challenging rival factions in a period of civil war. His reign was marked by ongoing conflicts with contenders, particularly Sverre Sigurdsson, who led the Birkebeiner faction against him. Magnus ultimately fell in battle against Sverre at Fimreite in 1184, marking the end of his rule and paving the way for Sverre's eventual consolidation of power in Norway. Magnus of Sweden, also known as Magnus Ladulas, meaning Magnus Barnlock, was King of Sweden from 1275 to 1290. He earned his nickname for his efforts to protect the peasants from the burdens of forced lotting by nobles and soldiers, symbolically locking their barns against exploitation. Magnus was known for strengthening royal authority and establishing reforms that laid the foundation for a more structured Swedish monarchy. He curtailed the power of the nobility and issued laws that protected the rights of free farmers, which was significant in Sweden's transition towards a more centralized state. Throughout Christian history, several saints bear the name Magnus, each celebrated across different regions and traditions. Among the most renowned is Saint Magnus of Orkney, also known as Magnus Erlandsson. A beloved Earl of Orkney, Magnus was martyred around 1115 and revered for his deep piety and commitment to peace. Following his death, he was canonized, and the stunning St. Magnus Cathedral in Orkney was built to honor his memory and virtues. Check out my video for more on that. Other saints named Magnus include St. Magnus of Fussen. Honored in the Bavarian town of Fussen, Germany, St. Magnus of Fussen may not have extensive historical records, but his memory endures in local devotion and traditions. Known within the Milanese tradition, Magnus of Milan is another lesser-documented saint, yet he remains a respected figure of faith in the city of Milan, Italy. A bishop of Toul in northeastern France, Saint Magnus is celebrated for his service and leadership in the early church, leaving a legacy that continues in the region's religious heritage. And last, but not least, Magnus Carlsen, the Norwegian chess grandmaster, widely regarded as the greatest player in chess history. Carlsen became a grandmaster at just 13 and becoming the second youngest world champion ever when he beat Viswanathan Anand in 2013. Known for his mastery across all time formats, classical, rapid, and blitz, he achieved the highest recorded chess rating in history with 2882 in 2014. His prominence has further popularized the name in Norway, but also around the world. Magnus remains a popular name in Scandinavia, particularly in Norway and Sweden, where it carries historical prestige due to its royal and saintly associations, and the Crown Prince of Norway is named Håkon Magnus, two prominent Viking names. The name is still quite common, though exact percentages can vary. As of recent estimates, approximately 1.5% of Norwegian males bear the name Magnus, while in Sweden, about 1.3% of the male population have the name, and a little bit less in Denmark, where approximately 0.5% of males have the name Magnus. In Iceland, Magnus remains popular, and an estimated 2,775 people in Iceland are named Magnus, which would represent approximately 0.75% of the total population. While the name is most common in Scandinavia, it is also used in other countries, like in English-speaking countries, Germany, and Eastern Europe. Given its Latin origin meaning great, the name Magnus has often been associated with power, leadership, and greatness. This is reflected in the fact that many kings and nobles chose the name, aiming to project these qualities. It has also been linked with historical figures that were known for their strength, wisdom, or leadership qualities, making Magnus a name for eternity. Since you made it all the way to the end, why not subscribe and put on all notifications so you don't miss my next video? And please give this video a like. It really helps out the channel a lot.